Hello gold farmers, welcome to another gold farming video. Today we'll be taking a look at the top 4 instances for the potion of treasure finding. I was going to try to do 5, but there's really only 4 instances that I was really able to find that actually worked really well with this, so unfortunately there aren't very many instances for using the potion of treasure finding. However, the ones that are really good for it yield you some really good gold. The first one that we'll be taking a look at is the Twilight Bastion, which I do highly recommend that you farm these on a tailor, mostly because the tailors will get that extra amount of cloth and make you a little bit more gold in the process. There is one dungeon, however, that I recommend that you actually run with a tailor or skinner, just because you can make a ton of gold off of it, and I really love that dungeon for farming. One thing to know about the Twilight Bastion is you can get locked out of it very quickly. If I remember correctly, it takes you roughly 15 minutes before you can get locked out, and once you do, I highly recommend that you go farm another location that allows you to pick up the tiny treasure chests. This is so you don't really lose a whole lot of gold in the process, or really waste the duration of the buff. A couple other things is I do have some shuffles up that allow you to maximize the amount of gold that you'll be making from all of these materials that we'll be picking up. You've got the Ember Silk Shuffle, there's a Elementium Ore Shuffle. I believe I may have shown the Savage Leather Shuffle. I could be wrong on that, and I'm not 100% sure, but some of the locations that I highly recommend that you farm when you do get locked out of Twilight Bastion is you got the shoreline up here. That does really well. Ironically, there are mobs that spawn here in High Bank that are on a forced respawn. Not many people know about it, and I do plan on going over a guide for it at some point. That's a really good spot. You've got your volatile water location over here, which is really good, and then actually just below the, or I guess, Bastion of Twilight, you've got mobs that are up around here that actually are really good to farm as well. I believe they're right in front of the purple area and all of that. Yep, they are ogres, and they spawn pretty frequently, and they're really not that bad to farm. The second location that we will be looking at will be the Firelands. The Firelands is a really good location for a couple different things. Not so much Ember Silk Cloth, but you can get a ton of Savage Leather there, so I do recommend that you farm the Firelands on some kind of skinner, just so that way you can make a smaller profit off of the picking up the Savage Leather as well. I do believe they have buffed the Firelands. I could be wrong on that, I'm not entirely sure. But I was testing it last night, and the yields were a lot better than what I remember, so I might actually be farming there quite a bit more. The Fireland only take about 5 minutes to complete a full run. You do have to be careful, however, because you do get stunned quite a bit, and usually how I pull that is I will just kind of pull until I get stunned. Then once I get that first stun, I'll stop and kill all of those mobs, and then just kind of run until I get stunned again and kill those mobs. Sometimes I can pull most of the raid without getting stunned, and sometimes I can get stunned right away, so it just kind of depends on all of that. Anyways, for as far as loot goes and all of that, within 3 runs I was able to pick up about 40 greens and about 50 of the tiny treasure chests, so the Firelands is very good for the portion of treasure finding. If you do happen to get locked out, which some classes might end up getting locked out, there is a location right here, the Ascendant's Rise, which is really good to farm for volatile fire, and you get a decent amount of the tiny treasure chests there as well. Although there's another way of farming the Firelands, which I use, is by the time you get locked out of the Firelands, you can head up here to the Shrine of Avena, and there is a mailbox. So I send all of my items and materials over to an alt, and by the time I get all of that done and get back to the entrance of Fireland, the time is kind of up and I can continue to run it and use another potion of treasure finding. Although you can make a little bit more gold off of it if you do go over to the Ascendant's Rise. I highly recommend that you actually do these on a Druid, and the biggest reason why is because you can access all of these locations very easily on a Druid by using the Dreamwalk ability. To get to the Bastion of Twilight, you'll just want to head over to the Hinterlands portal in the Emerald Dream, and you can head your way over to the Twilight Highlands. For the Firelands, you can use your Dreamwalk ability and head straight to Mount Hydra, which really helps, and it's just a really easy way of navigating through the zones and getting where you need to very quickly. And as you can see, just a small amount of loot, and I already have 4 of the tiny treasure chests and quite a few greens. Anyways, for our next dungeon, we'll be looking at ZulGrub. ZulGrub is by far my favorite dungeon to farm for, or to use the potion of treasure finding, and I'll go a bit over that, or a bit why here in a bit. You have to run ZulGrub in Heroic, and one thing I did forget to mention is I highly recommend that you run these raids in Heroic. The 2 dungeons that we'll be looking at, you have to run in Heroic anyways, so that doesn't really affect anything. Anyways, to get to ZulGrub pretty quickly, you'll just want to head over here to Duskwood. And another nice thing to see if you want to kind of just test all of them out is all the portals are on the bottom of the Emerald Dreamway. And if you accidentally go to the wrong portal, you can kind of change up where you are wanting to go and just kind of farm one of these other locations. For ZulGrub though, I highly recommend that you run as either a Skinner or a Tailor, or even both. The reason why is because there are quite a few mobs in ZulGrub that can be skinned, which is really nice. The downfall to ZulGrub is it is a little bit harder to farm now with the NuStar Fallibility. Sorry about that, my game ended up crashing, and I'm not really sure why. Anyways, as I was saying, and I guess I don't know all of what was caught on camera and if my voice was still recording in the time the game had crashed, but as I was saying, ZulGrub has been changed greatly, mostly because the Starfall ability, you used to be able to just hit the button and the ability would work, but now Starfall has a little ranged AoE instead of the other. I guess I don't really know how to explain it because I don't know the technical terms for what the changes are and all of that. But for ZulGrub, you don't really have to farm it on a Druid. I just recommend that you use a Druid because it's easier to get to. Although ZulGrub is pretty close to Stormwind, so it's really not that big of a issue for what class you farm this dungeon on. However, you do have to farm ZulGrub in Heroic. Again, I do highly recommend that you farm this dungeon on a Skinner or Tailor. In my opinion, I would choose a Tailor over a Skinner if you are farming it with the Potion of Treasure Finding. The reason why is because there's two different routes for this dungeon. The route for Tailors, you run up on the top of the dungeon. The second route, you run on the bottom through the water and all that to kill all the fish. But for this dungeon, I'm not really going to go over the full route. I'll just explain it, and I will leave a link in the description below over the route for this location. Anyways, you'll want to kill these little quest bosses. If you kill the quest bosses, you're not going to get locked out. If you kill a regular boss, then you will get locked out and you won't be able to restart this dungeon or anything. The biggest reason why I absolutely love this dungeon for the Potion of Treasure Finding is just because of the sheer amount of materials you get from it. For a lot of those who don't know, I am a material farmer. I'm not so much a transmog farmer, but I am a material farmer, and I love anything that yields me a ton of materials. So a lot of times I do try to avoid dungeons and instances unless if you can get a lot of materials, and with the Potion of Treasure Finding you can obviously get a ton of materials. However, ZulGrub sets everything apart just because of the amount of materials you can get. The quest bosses allow you to loot some extra materials. You can loot bags, which is very helpful. So the top part that I am farming here is for Tailors, and I'm not really going to continue too much from here, but you've got a quest boss right here. There's another quest boss inside of the hut right here. You've got another quest boss that I believe he spawns right here. Then another one that spawns up here somewhere. And then you've got one that spawns on this bridge. You are able to loot two bosses that drop a bag that yields roughly 20 elementium ore per bag, so you can get about 40 elementium ore here. You can get that one, which gives you a good amount of volatile air. Twilight Jasmine doesn't really sell for a whole lot, but you've also got the volatile water, so keep in mind you can get 10 of those bags, so you can without the potion of treasure finding, you can loot a lot of materials. But once you add that potion of treasure finding, you can add a lot more from the tiny treasure chests. So it's essentially like you have two potions of treasure finding on while running one dungeon, which is why I really like it. It's really good for materials. You can usually get around 100k per hour. I think the most I've gotten from ZulGrub was about 120k, which is really nice. So this last place that we will be looking at is Sulaiman, which I do vaguely forget how to get to it fairly easily, mostly because I don't farm this dungeon necessarily a whole lot. However, it looks like you will want to head to the hinterlands, and then you'll want to head up to Ghostlands. If you are a horde character, then it would be a bit easier in that sense, and I guess I'm not sure if the Emerald Dreamway is different for horde characters, and if they have different portals. I assume if they do, then it would just be the different portal for Duskwood, although I don't see why that would be different or anything. One of the key things to note for Sulaiman is you can get a pet to drop, and the pet is Mojo. Not many people farm this pet anymore, and the last time I remember is going for about 5k. The pet is somewhat hard to obtain, and I'm not really going to go into much details in this video about how you get that pet or anything, but you will pick up these, I believe they're hex sticks, and from the hex sticks you will use them on frogs, and you have a chance of collecting the pet Mojo. A lot like Firelands and ZulGrub, you do get a decent amount of the tiny treasure chests here. You don't get necessarily a ton of them, but when you factor in the chance for the pet, you do get a decent amount. For Sulaiman, and I don't really plan on flying all the way there. Again, you have to run this as heroic. You don't want to kill any of the main bosses, and for this run you will come up through here. You'll want to head down this way, pull all of these mobs that are up around in here, and then you can kill all of them. I usually kill them all about here, and then I will slowly kill the mobs up here. Skip this boss, you can just run off the edge right here, and there's two different ways you can go about this. If you run this one as a skinner, I highly recommend that you just kind of come up here and kill all of the beasts that you can skin. Then you can run back and come right around here, which the middle location right here is where the frogs spawn. And you have a chance of getting the pet from this location right here. If you aren't a skinner, then when you jump off the ledge right here, you can just easily run through and exit the instance that way. It's a very short route. It's about a 5-minute route if you do it the short way, and about a 7-minute route if you do it the long way. That will be all, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content.